Welcome to another episode of Son of Elijah. My name is Mac the Lion and I'm your host for this program. We continue our series on Satan's toolbox or the witch's toolbox. And by connecting with this, we are going to bring you to a place where this week I want us to look at the specific dimension of aesthetic irritableness and how that has become a problem in the world that we live in under the 7 dimensions of wickedness, of which is all compartments existing in Satan's toolbox, the instruments he uses for the mutilation of lives and destiny. But what Satan does is this: from a childhood, Satan begins to look for filthy predators around our community, around their lives, in any form or way, to come in and visually violate them. And by that sexual assault, they are being seedified with that seed of that wickedness. And then they now lose their self-esteem. Then they now become fearful. Then they now become easily triggered. Then they now become disgusted. Then they now begin, and they'll start attracting the wrong men, the ones they call the bad boys. That's where it starts from, because now they have been abused already, and that abuse comes from some type of assault. It could come from a family member, it could come from someone nearby, it could even come from a neighbor, it could come from someone living just within the confines of that place, because Satan will keep searching. Because Satan isolates them, he knows their calling, he has gone to their stars, he has seen that their visual representation is where their favor is. And then he now say, how do I turn this one into a tramp? How do I turn this one into a whore? How do I turn this one into a street walker and a woman of the night? How do I make it possible? Then he begins to look for filthy agents who are predators, who are sexual assaulters, people who are rapists, people who destroy the destinies of others, and most likely males, because predatorship is most but not exclusive to males. There are females who are molesting. I remember a young lady who said it was when she was being nannied that she was molested by a certain nanny who just kept doing that. And then when she became older and became an adult, there was an uncontrollable urge for her to be drawn to women and become, a lesbian and all that. And all that happened because seeds were already been planted in her when she was young by a molester. Someone had already molested her and then made it possible. So when she became old, or when she became older, that seed or that wickedness or that dark matter began to speak through her. And by trying to speak through her, it started drawing, people and trying to attract her to females who are of exactly the same sex with her. And then she's wondering, why is this happening? Not knowing that the seed of that molestation that occurred as a child by another female had already implanted the seed of that wickedness, making it possible for her now to want to go into that type of conjugal, illegal, criminal relationship, which will produce nothing, because you don't produce descendants with that. It does not do anything. It only satisfies your destructive pleasure. It only feeds that seed. It only feeds that dark matter that Satan has put in your body. But it's not normal, it's not natural. It cannot produce descendants. It cannot have the proper stability. I don't care if you call yourself a stud and this one is the opposite of a stud. Whatever you like, you call yourself. It doesn't matter whether you are some type of lesbosite. What I do know is this: it is unnatural. It is not designed to be. You're only responding to a seed that was sowed inside of you by molestation. That's why 95 or 98 or 99% of people who say they are attracted to same sex, like the homosexual behavior, are people who were molested as children. They were seedified. Almost every single one of them were molested at some point, and that molestation is the seed they are responding to. So when they come out and say, no, people are born that way, maybe some of those things happened to them before they came to a place of knowing who they were. So they did not even have a recollection of that particular event because they were too small to know. But that thing happened to them, and that seedification is responsible for the response of what is now drawing them. Now, you don't need to own it, because once you say, I am gay, once you use that term, you have owned it. And once you have owned it, you are gone. That's how it works. That's why what was done against you may be bad, but at the end of the day, you must not own it. You must fight it. You must resist it. If you own it, you become one with it. If you become one with it, it becomes what? A situation of deprecation and ruinage for yourself, because the Bible says, they that do these things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. Wait, before we go any further, please, could you just over there, you will see the like button. Just tap on it, because that helps the algorithm. And while you're at it, if you've not subscribed, just go beside there, you see the subscription button. Tap on that also too. That will help us to be able to stay in your ecosystems anytime we upload new stuff. All right, thank you. So let's continue where we stopped. So the world may be okay with it, the laws of the land may applaud it, but in the kingdom of God, it is not acceptable. Now we have people who say they are Christian this or they are Christian that. It's an oxymoron. That word Christian gay is a myth. It doesn't exist. You can't be both. You're either one or the other. You can't be both. And I'm not trying to make a big deal out of it. You can't be both. You can only be one or the other. Now you may believe what the devil is telling you, and you may believe whatever the community and the dwellers of the land are telling you, but unfortunately none of these people own heaven. You say no, leave it to God, don't get involved with it. So it's a setup, because at that time it's too late. You can't repent in the grave. You can't repent in hell. You can't repent after you have gone. No, there's no repentance in the grave. And the devil knows that. That's why the talking point of these people is leave it to God, leave it to God. And they always like to say, no, we don't want conversion therapy. No, it's not a conversion therapy. It's a reset of the clock to bring you back to the originality of where you were in God. Now, these are all the things that the enemy works on night and day to make sure he mutilates people, bring them to a mindset where they align with this behavior and then accept it and say they were born that way, God created them that way. And then by accepting it and indulging in it and making it part and parcel of their existence, they have now been claimed. That dark matter has now claimed them, and so now they are at home with it. No, you are meant to fight it. You are meant to refuse to own it. Don't own your weakness. Don't own your dark matter. Don't own the assault against your destiny. Rather resist it. Rather go the opposite direction. Rather do whatever is necessary for you to move away from it. Rather do whatever is required in order for you to disengage from it. Because if you continue to live in that trajectory, at the end of the day, it will claim your destiny and you will not accomplish the fullness of what God has scheduled for you. And when this world is done, you stand before God, and God will no more look at the fact that it was someone that seedified or molested or abused you or sexually assaulted you. God will say, but even after that was done to you, you still went ahead and accepted it as yours. There are people that are doing things right now. It's ludicrous when you think about it. Someone was sexually molested as a child, and now today they are doing porn. Now today they are sexually, selling their body and selling themselves for money. And then you begin to say, but I don't understand. If this thing was what was done against you, why are you now giving it away and now making money out of your trauma? The reason is because that was the whole essence of what the devil was trying to achieve from the originality. That when that vice, when that vicious act occurs to them, immediately gives them what it takes for them to now say, okay, I've lost my self-esteem. I have no sense of value for myself anymore. I might as well just let people have it for a fee. And based on that, they get into that. There are others who are joining the OF club and they are thinking that, the men are not, because they are calm girls, and they are saying, of course, the men are not visually here and they are not visually touching me, so that means that I'm exempted. No, you are not, because what you are doing is that you are the object of lust, because people are getting destructive pleasure from the images you are projecting, and as a result of that, you are feeding the demise of those addicts while simultaneously breaking down your soul and bringing it to a place where it's crumbifying and coming down to ruination. That's why the women who do these things, after a while, they begin to regret, they begin to cry, they begin to talk about how they were never happy, how they were always depressed, how they were taking antidepressants. Why? Because their soul is being eaten, as it were. People are literally tearing their soul away, using it to feed their destructive habits and their deprecative habits, while they themselves may say, okay, the person is not physically here, but solically they are there. They are present in the spiritual realm, because now this is what they are indulging in. This is the things they are doing. And as a result of that, they are drawing from that deprecation, because it's lost. You are destroying those lives using what God gave you to be given to just one person in an institution, produce children and have a beautiful life. But because you have listened to the lies of this world, where they say sexual empowerment, women empowerment, sleep with whoever you like, however you like, for as long as you like, jump from one person to another as you please, do everything. They call it the sexual revolution. But the people who created the sexual revolution never partook from it. They never jumped in themselves, because that was the whole idea, was to set up these women who are from the aesthetic, exceptional, visual representation of the satisfaction of that visuality on the earth. And that's what Satan was targeting when he tried everything he can to get these individuals to a place where that image now becomes the instrument of their wickedness. And then they are confident that they are able to continue in that trajectory and get to where they want to. This, unfortunately, is so terrible, because when the devil gives these people this option, what they don't know is that they have an open wound. Because you see, what is the end game? The end game for these aesthetic women, Satan's vision is for them to be wounded and damaged. Have you seen a 40-year-old call girl or prostitute who have been selling since she was in her 20s or even in her late teens? You could see the damage. You could see the loss of a self-esteem. You could see their sense of self-worth, low self-worth. You see the sense of depression because they battle their demons in the night when no one is there. It's very painful when they begin to battle those thoughts of just suddenly ending it. You see, you have to understand that everything they do is designed exclusively for them to lose that virtue, to lose that life. At the end of the day, to almost die of depression, for them to become, suicidal, for them to, and the devil keeps saying, end it, finish it, nobody wants you, nobody likes you. This person molested you, people you trusted did this to you as a child, and now see what you have become. They exercise pedophiliac things on you, and see today now you are ruined. See today now no one will ever want you. And then that thing now builds up fear in them. Then they become very fearful. Then their trauma begin to fester, and then they have these open wounds in their inner man, and from that wound Satan is feeding that deprecation. Satan is refiring on all those things, and then when they try and hook up with good relationships, it never works. With everything that they represent physically, it will never work because their inner man is damaged, because their innate person is damaged. There is no way ever they can be joyful, they can be excited, they can be fulfilled, they can be happy. It will never happen. It will always be momentarily. They may connect very quickly, they may be emotionally inclined to someone, but at the end of the day, because of the innate damage, because of the innate damage that has already occurred as a result of the woundedness that was never healed, now they have now become agents that Satan now uses as open wound. And when they come around men who patronize those type of things, those men immediately aroused. And what arouses them is the smell of the spiritual stench that is coming from their woundedness of their spirit. And then those men now want to, by all means, pave and do anything necessary in order for them to join in that action. Why? Because that destructive pleasure is actually designed to make sure that those individuals will be able to feed their demons or feed the demons of these men. So those men that they call the Johns, some of them are married, some of them have a family, some of them even have a stable fiancé or a female acquaintance who they are in a permanent relationship unto marriage, but now they go and patronize the destructive pleasures of this escorts and call girls and the street girls, simply because they are looking for the destructive pleasure of lust, which is rooted in their members, because now they are addicts to that bad behavior. And men like that, even when they get married, they will still look for those they can pay and enjoy the destructive pleasure that is rooted in the fact that they are damaged, and now they are going into damage women like that. They don't like the pleasure, or they do not laudate or celebrate the pleasure of that which is done within the marriage, because that one is legal and it's clean or sanctified by the law of the fact that it's a proper marriage, and the individuals that are there exchange vows, and then the body is one with you as you go into that conjugal enactment. But once it's done outside that parameter and now brought to a place of uncleanliness and immorality, because now these men are like flies looking for where to lay their eggs, maggots as it were, because they are looking for the dirtiest pool to jump into. They like the mud and the smut and the uncleanliness, and that's why some of them would join the swingers club, some of them would join debaucherous places where orgies are occurring there. Some of them are heard of things like sex parties, and all these things are despicable arrangements that people have scheduled in order for them to feed their demons. And all those who are having all these problems, both the women who present themselves as instruments of that deprecation, or the males who are patronizing and drawing from that wells of deprecation, they all meet together and then they create a cesspool of uncleanliness and immorality and destruction. And that's what Satan is enjoying. That's what he loves, because that's the end game of making those who are aesthetic to become instruments of destruction, where they extrapolate pleasures from them for the demise of those who are extracting it forcefully and viciously and immorally, and those who are giving it out and also being stripped or taken away, because pieces of their soul is being taken away every minute, and that destruction at the end of the day is unto ruinage. So the only way forward is for you to fight through it and resist it and push back. You may not be responsible for those who ambushed you, molested you, put you in this very terrible, precarious situation, but you are responsible for rejecting it or owning it, because if you own it, it becomes one with yours. And now it's no more just becomes what was given to you originally, now becomes what you have made one with yourself. And as a result of that, you will now have to answer for it before God, because now you are turned the house and the temple that God gave you, for which God is meant to live in, for now to become a habitation of devils, of uncleanness, of immorality, of smut, of obscenities, of bareness, people flashing their body in places, they are private in funny places, becoming exhibitionists as some of them call it, and talk about how they don't have a problem, how they like such things, how they enjoy it. When people tell you that, oh, there's nothing wrong with it, I'm an exhibitionist, I can do this, I have people, we come together, we enjoy ourselves, I have a parade we do at a certain time, we enjoy ourselves, we have night parties and sexual gatherings that we go to and we enjoy ourselves. Please trust me, at this point in time, they've owned it. And then those individuals now show up in places where they ought not to be, now becoming debaucherous, now indulging in all kinds of, sexual parties and having the fun of their life, as it were, feeding the demons of men who literally are addicts, who can't stop themselves, who are addicted to all kinds of fetishes, strange desires, and all kinds of things. And as a result of that, they become culpable because now they've owned that which was originally seedified in them. That's why most of the people who you find in the sex industries, when they talk to them, there's a label they call daddy issues, because they did not have a proper role model of a father who protected them. And as a result of that, they were kind of thrown to the dogs. And then the dogs came and molested and abused them and preyed upon them. And by preying upon them, and now they've been abused and molested and wounded, and now that woundedness has resulted in them being damaged. And now their esteem or self-classification is so low that they have literally yielded themselves over to all kinds of sexual behavior, misgivings, all kinds of incriminating compliance of uncleanliness, dishing out sexual favors for resources. And at the end of the day, they are damaged day and day. It's getting worse and worse. And as a result of that, they are trapped. And many of them have even passed as a result of that. They are damaged so quickly. Their body can't handle it over time because the trauma is just overwhelming. And these are all the things that are happening in our world today. So if we are going to overcome, or anyone has been abused, and many have, because the devil has an agenda and he will not stop. And that's just the way it is. He can identify those who have that aestheticness. So this is what I would tell you. If you're a parent and you can see, of course, you should provide care, protection, preservation for all your children. So these are individuals who continue to live this way. They continue to indulge in these behaviorals, and they are not really enjoying it, but they are going with the flow of that destructive device that has been embedded in them even from a young age when they were abused and molested. And that was the end game of Satan when he sent that visual or that vicious assaulter to predate upon your life and your destiny. That was the end game, to make sure that one day you become a non-entity who is just literally paving and walking on the tarmac, looking for the next John and the next client, browsing through the internet, waiting for who is the next John that will come in and consume X-rated content, explicit content, so that at the end of the day you feed their demons, and then the addiction gets worse and worse. You become an instrument that is the feeder of that filth, as it were. And that's how Satan brings both of this from one side and this other side, and then both are being ruined unto deprecation. So, and you have to understand that the spirit of hell with the spirit of death, with the spirit of the grave, all of them are working together. The grave is breaking down the body, using it as an instrument of destructive pleasure, extrapolated in a deprecative format that will cause trauma and breakdown of the person's membrane and make sure that their system or their members is ruined, literally. So what you are doing without knowing is that that person is trafficking in his or her trauma. Literally, you are trafficking on your trauma, because there are people who love damaged women, not to marry them, no, not to settle with them and fix them, no, but to actually wallow in the mud, to actually swim in the filth, to actually lay eggs in the wound, as it were, and let maggots fester even more, and then the wound becomes worse and worse, and then they come back again and jump right in again. And then that filthification, then that immorality, that deprecation continues, and that damage goes deeper and deeper. And because these individuals were originally created to be highly emotional and they feel things, as it were, this thing now even worsens them because the depth of their feeling is really being seared with a hot iron, and now their emotional connection is almost dead, and then they can't connect with any male or any one of the opposite sex naturally anymore. It's all on that frequency of destructive pleasure where they dish out the pleasure and this one's on the receiving end, and when both of them come together, there's destruction for everyone and enough to go around. The end game of the spirit of hell is to make sure when that person's life ends, that person now dies and goes to hell. And you know, hell is a jailhouse for all those who were bound, because this is the bondage of sexual immorality. So to the man who is bound, he is in chains and fetters, being bound to feeding his addictions and his sexual proclivities, while to the woman who is offering that service, she's going with the trauma, because the trauma is washing her downstream and literally carrying her downstream, as it were. So she finds herself now indulging in this behavior in perpetuity, all for resources and sustenance, which at times will never give you what you want, because you'll never be satisfied, you'll never be happy. At the end of the day, it will be one trauma on top of another layer, and that's what they call baggages, because the baggages get worse and worse and worse. So that deprecative multiplication continues on an end, because that person is going downstream based on the wound that will not just be healed. So the only way for you to be fixed is for you to fight through it. You have to go the opposite direction. You can't go downstream, because downstream is flowing, it's pushing you down. And these individuals are always very fearful because of the fear that comes, because the spirit of filthification comes with fear, and that fear is what also works in them to produce that low self-esteem and everything that has to do with it. And then with all that, they are easily irritated, easily triggered. They become very bitter over the things that happen to them and the people who didn't love them or protect them or care for them or provide the leadership that was required for them to be protected. And that now brings me to my final point. If you have a child that you've come to exceptionally isolate, to know this one has some aesthetic and exceptional presentation, and you would always know because they're always very forward, they are very presenty, at times they are very girlish, at times they are very demonstrative. There are a lot of qualities you see and you know this one clearly has some exceptional visuality, especially when people come around, family and friends, and they say, oh, she's so beautiful, oh, she's so... I'm not talking about just a baby that is born. Everybody calls a newborn baby beautiful, but I'm talking about when they now begin to grow, and then you see that emphasis continues. That means that one is aesthetic. And if the aesthetic, you have to put a triple layer of a fence around them. You have to know where they live. You have to be sure of how they live within your enclave. Your protection has to be triple layer. It doesn't matter if at the end of the day someone say you're overprotective. Don't listen to them. Protect your word, protect your children, build a triple fence around them. There are young ladies today who say it was their mother's boyfriend that molested them, and it's becoming worse and worse. I'm hearing it every single day. My mother's boyfriend molested me. And all these women, all these adult women who are not married, but they have a certain male who comes into to come and warm their bed, or a boyfriend or they live with. These are the individuals who now decide to be eating from two places, mother and daughter, and it's an abomination that the Lord said is a curse upon anyone who does it. But what are they doing now? They are doing it literally, and they don't care, because these are children of the world, children of disobedience that of course have scheduled themselves onto eternal destruction. And if you are not careful and you allow such individuals into your house, some mothers will come and defend themselves and say, no, I never knew he was doing that. That is the problem. You bring people that are outsiders. The number one person that is still a child is safest with is the one who gave birth to them, or the one who's responsible for their existence, their mother and their father. That's still the best person. Yes, we know we have some incestuous, pedophiliac fathers these days, but that is still a very tiny, minute individuals compared to the rest, because the rest, or the most proportion of males, still take care or try as much as possible to build a wall of garrison or protection around their own daughters. So that is still the best person. So when women quickly say, oh, we have a problem, and as a result of that they move away from the person who is the father of their child, and then they move over to all these individuals who are now new individuals, you don't know whether they have a propensity for immorality that goes beyond just you, because for someone to want to be warming your bed outside the parameters of marriage is already a red flag. And then added to the fact that they are now willing to come and move in or stay in your place and allow your children to be vulnerable to them, they will fall into a trap if this person have a propensity for it. And every time Satan already sees the environment is created, he tells the person to go for the kill. That's what he does. He moves upon them, he arouses them to that destructive agenda, and before you know it, they are now molesting and abusing a child or a minor. This is what is happening real in our world today. So mothers need to do more to make sure that they keep keep these predators out. They must fight to stop it. They must fight, and they must never put their own personal desires. Because there was a case I was dealing with in London, England. I remember that case very clearly. The woman had a male who was living with her like a boyfriend or whatever, and then her teenage daughter was being abused by this one sexually. And then when it was brought to the attention, she was denying it, and the guy was denying it, and the woman was protecting his denial and saying, no, he would never do that. And the truth is that a young child like that would never make up something like that, because there is no reason for her to do so. But the reason why she was protecting him was because she doesn't want him to go. You see, as far as she's concerned, that's her warm blanket, and she was willing to sacrifice her own daughter for this warm blanket. And a lot of women that are doing this, they can see the truth, but they refuse to accept the truth, because they will rather not lose the man rather than for them to acquiesce that this man is molesting their own daughter right under their roofs. And this is what is happening, and it's becoming more prevalent. All these are the workings of the toolbox of Satan, because he's doing everything he can to make sure he destroys more and more girls, more and more females. Even boys are being molested too today. That's why we have an explosion of this whole gay agenda. They are all products of molestation. They are all products of molestation. It's a seedification, a moral act that is coming from individuals who are preyed upon minors and then seedify them by injecting them with the seed of the dark matter, which is from Satan's toolbox. And then from there, Satan is able to remotely manipulate the lives of these young people, and that seed now grows with them. And then by the time they become adults, they now come out and say, I have a propensity and attraction for same-sex, and as a result of that, they are now gay. But what they didn't know is that they were molested and seedified as a child, and they didn't know this whole process. That is what 99.99% of all people on this claim that's what happened to them, but they don't know. Some of them, it happened before they even came to a place of maturation. So they are wounded, they are damaged, and they always have broken relationships because they can't bond without trauma. It's not possible. There's baggages, there's stench, and they would always attract those who are attracted to their damage. So how can you even bond with someone who's an addict, or how can you bond with someone who is also equally damaged? It's not possible. It's not possible. You may try everything you can, but it won't work, because you'll be feeding off each other's trauma, and that's what creates a cesspool of a mess. And that's why the people are never healed. I've seen them so many times. Some of those women become so protective of the man. They are like, oh, he's everything to me, but actually he's feeding from your trauma, and then your desirability is rooted in him feeding on your trauma. Your desirability is rooted in him feeding on your trauma, and you think that trauma he's feeding off is actually love, but it's not love, it's actually lust. And as a result of that lustful pleasure of him feeding his demons with your trauma, you now mistaking it for true love, and that love is now lost, that is damaging and ruining your life. And that's why if you examine your life very well, you will see that you are not happy, you will see that your spirit is bound, you will see that you are going downstream, you will see that you are struggling as you are going, you will see that things are not going your way, and your life is a mess because of that trauma, because of that damage, because of that mutilation of your innate person, because of that filth that is now being fed. So it's one thing for you to be abused, it's another thing for you to own that abuse. You must never own the abuse. You must never now allow yourself to now become an instrument of pleasure for those who are also addicted to that abusive nature. And as a result of that, that destruction now becomes a perpetual lifestyle of which Satan is the mastermind and the designer of it. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm just going to leave it there. And I hope you were able to get something out of this training, out of this teaching. I know it went on a bit, but it's just to make sure that I cover all the things that has to do with being aesthetic and the opposite of it being irritableness. Thank you for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Please do join us in another episode of Son of Elijah. I'm so happy that you are here, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Please also, if you want to be a part of what we're doing, in the description section, you will see all our details for both local and international givers. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a part of this. I will see you in the next episode of Son of Elijah. Bye.